Hello,
Hello,
everyone.
everyone.
Hi.
Well, we are live
Hello.
for the first time on the channel of Longitudinous, the multilingual magazine for creative writing, literary translation, and the arts. My name is Antonio. I'm one of the general editors of Longitudinous. Of the other two, Amin will be monitoring the chat, while Andrea is attending a seminar on literary translation. That's how dedicated we are. But we have a small part of our multilingual team here. We have Elisa, the editor for Romanian.
Hello.
Cleo, editor for Greek, and
Hello.
Valeria, who is our social media and marketing expert. And finally, we are happy to introduce to you our guests. We start, with a great one. And to make sure I pronounce his name correctly, I think I'm going.
I will do it for you, I
Cleo
guess,
yeah.
so that we have a correct Greek pronunciation. We are happy to introduce you to Miltos Yerolemou. Most of you know him from the very famous HBO series Game of Thrones. Hi, Miltos.
Hello, everyone. Lovely to see
We
you.
are very happy that
Hi.
you joined us today, and thank you very much for being here together with us.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
I apologize for my hat. I have recently had my hair cut, and it's very, very big. It's so big that it may obliterate the rest of this picture. So I've had to constrain it under my Star Wars hat. so apologies for hiding my
That's
hair.
better because we prefer to see you
gonna
instead of
upstage
your
me.
hair.
Yeah.
It's a nice hat. Yeah.
That's great. That's great. Most of you who are watching us now know you from Game of Thrones, of course, from your role as Syrio Forel. But here we will try to ask you some questions about the rest of your life that many of our viewers now don't know about. But tell us first, where are you now? Where do you spend your lockdown period? And what are you up to now?
I am in London. And I am in my fiance's apartment, and I have my dog with me, Louis, the sausage dog, and that is pretty much. I've been between here and Bristol, which is actually my home, but I'm in London at the moment. I'm in London because I'm about to start filming, and for the first time in a very long time. So I'm very excited. I can't really tell you very much about it because of the NDAs I've had to sign about secrecy and stuff, but it's an excellent show, and it's got an amazing cast that doesn't include me. I mean, the other cast are amazing, but it's really nice to be working again. Definitely,
we can't wait to see what are you up to. And I guess all this long lockdown period has affected you, and now you're happy to be back. Actually, back in action.
Yeah, I am very, very happy. And I mean, it's, I was also very, very happy to be able to keep myself hidden and not put myself at any risk. So I felt very lucky in that respect, because I know a lot of people have had to be working, and sometimes against their own wishes. But yeah, it's been tough, lockdown. First time round in the UK last year was kind of okay, but I think this time, since Christmas, it's been harder. It's been much harder.
Yeah, I understand. I think it's pretty much the same everywhere. So it's good that we can have you now and we can talk through internet, have this nice conversation with you.
It's nice to talk to people, because obviously I don't get to see many people.
Okay, that's good. Apart from Game of Thrones, of course, you've participated in many television and theatrical productions. Many of us have watched the excellent Netflix series The Crown. Excellent according to me, because I really like the plot. And we will ask you about all that later. But as the Greek editor, I think I am the one who could start and pose you some questions about your Greek heritage, your Greek environment, your Greek culture. I think it's something that few people can understand what being Greek or Cypriot Greek means. And I would really like to pose you some questions about that and about your linguistic identity also. So we know that you grew up in London in the UK, but your father is Greek. Is that right? He's Cypriot Greek.
Yeah, both my mother and my father. Yeah.
Your mother is? I'm sorry.
My mother and my father are both Greek Cypriot. In fact,
so they are both. I would like to ask you about your mother because everybody mentions your father.
Yeah.
What's really interesting is that my parents are from a very small village in Cyprus called Ios Theodoros, and that's on the south coast. There's another Ios Theodoros north, but this is the one in the Larnaca district. And both my parents were born in the same year, within a few days of each other. One was in January, the other one was in February. They've known each other since they were babies, and they are still together, amazingly, despite knowing each other that long. But yeah, they're from the same village. They grew up together. They've lived together. They've worked together, and we came to the UK when my mother was pregnant with me on a boat all the way to Southampton, and they took retirement about 25 years ago. So they've been back in Cyprus for a long time.
So now they live there in Ios Theodoros village.
Yeah, back in the same village. Yeah,
that's great. And do you visit them often? Do you visit them often?
Yeah, every year, as often as I can. Of course, I really miss them at the moment, and it's been really hard not being able to see them. So as soon as we can, we're going to go and see them.
And can I ask what they are doing for a living? I mean, did they have any connection with theater or acting? So this kind of influenced you? Because I think that in a really, really small village in Cyprus, this could be somehow difficult.
No, they were farmers.
Okay.
Our village is very well known for our oranges and our olives. Olives now more because a lot of people changed over from fruit to olives because oranges and lemons weren't selling anymore. So everyone has moved on to olives. My dad has his own olive grove. He's getting a little old now to because it's a lot of trees. And he does it the old-fashioned way, where they smash it with the branches. They lay the nets down and they smash it with the branches. I think he's a bit too old. His back isn't as what it used to be to keep doing that. But no, they were farmers who came to the UK and worked in restaurants. So I was born in London, but we soon moved to Eastbourne, which is on the south coast of the UK, and the seaside towns in the UK. The one thing is the fish and chips. So my dad ended up having his own fish and chip restaurant, and that's what I grew up in when I was a child. And my parents still, I think, to this day, are not very happy with me being an actor. I think they would have preferred it if I was
really.
Yeah, either a teacher or a solicitor, or the normal jobs that we find fit into the character of being successful, let's say.
Okay, that's interesting.
And so I and my parents are very supportive, but I wouldn't say that they were very thrilled when I said I was going to be an actor.
Although in Cyprus and in Greece, you're pretty famous, and like having a Greek Cypriot actor acting in Game of Thrones, that's a huge success for Greece or Cyprus. So you have a really great reputation here.
There was a very funny story I have to tell you. When I did the first season of Game of Thrones, and maybe a year and a half after they showed the series on the TV, it still wasn't, huge, because it took a few years for it to really gather momentum throughout the whole world. But I had the DVD and I gave it to my parents. In fact, my parents didn't have a DVD player. So I bought them a DVD player for Christmas and gave them the DVD to watch. They never watched it. They just, my parents are, they don't watch movies all the time. They watch the soap operas, but they never watched it. And then about 4 years ago, they started showing Game of Thrones in the Cafeneon, you know, the Cafeneon, and on the outside screen where they usually watch the football.
But they watch their Game of Thrones.
They started they showed it every week.
Okay, because we have to explain
Sunday.
this, I guess, because it's something really Greek. So for you who don't know, like a cafenio is like a cafeteria, but really traditional Greek that usually old people go when they discuss and they play traditional games like tavli. And there it's extremely weird to watch Game of Thrones. The best things you can watch there is like football games and political shows. It's extremely weird and really interesting.
So it shows how big Game of Thrones was. Like,
it was a huge, big deal in the village. People loved it. And then, of course, when I turned up in the 3rd episode of the series, my dad had forgotten that. I don't even know if he really understood that I was in it. Everyone, they recognized me. And of course, it made my dad a celebrity in the village because I was his son. I mean, it didn't matter about me. It was that Roger was the one who became the celebrity. So he got really into it, and he's never missed an episode since.
Of course, you were the celebrity. But as a child, did you learn Greek in the UK, or did it happen that you learned it later? Do you consider yourself, a bilingual or not?
Well, it was my first language, of course. So I learned Greek before I learned English. My parents didn't speak very good English. My dad, you know, education's tough when you don't have a lot of money, especially we're talking, you know, the times when the lead up to the Turkish invasion. So, you know, it was really tough. And
it's tough time.
My dad went into the army very, very early and had to fight. And so when they came to England, you know, their English was really limited. My mother learnt English by reading pulp fiction novels, you know, and so I spoke English before I went to school. And so when I got to about 5, I spoke Greek. That was Greek Cypriot was the language I spoke. And also I learned it obviously.
The language, the dialect in the beginning. So sorry to interrupt you, but you learned the dialect, not the official, let's say, Greek.
Cypriot, because the village that my parents grew up in was a Turkish Cypriot village. And so it was very half and half Turkish Cypriot, Greek Cypriot, split by one river. But they lived together and worked together before the Troubles. And so a lot of the language was, you know, a mixture of Turkish, Cypriot, you know, like it was. And so when I was speaking it, and even to this day when I speak it, people always recognize. They say, you've got the dialect of an old man, you know.
Really specific, because it's not even the Cypriotic dialect. It's a mixture even of the Cypriotic dialect.
Exactly. And so I went to school, and that's when it changed. That's when my ear as a mimic was the thing that allowed me to pick up English very easily, because I you know, that's how my brain processes things. So as you can see now, I speak without an accent now. So
actually now you speak like you're British for sure, but do you consider yourself that you are native Greeks? Then you're native Cypriot. Which language do you consider your native one? I mean,
it's British, really. It's strange because I understand Greek very, very well. I understand everything someone says to me, but because I don't speak it very often, my tongue and my brain is very slow. So once I spend time, I remember doing an opera in Greece, in Athens, and I was there for a while, and a lot of the crew were Greek, and it just came back to me, and I just could remember. I eventually started dreaming in Greek, and I realized that it's there, but because my tongue is very, you know, it's very lazy, or, you know, it's slow. It makes me very self-conscious, and I get embarrassed. So that's it. But once I'm there for a little while, it all comes back.
It comes back naturally. I understand.
Because
And
I understand it, you know, I don't have to think about it when I hear it. I understand it completely.
yeah, I totally understand what you say, because it's also not it's not an easy language. Greek is not an easy language
So
to
different from English as well. That's the thing.
it's a lot it's more difficult. So it's not easy to think everything and speak quickly and naturally. But I found it really interesting that you mentioned once that you were told you had to speak Greek for a show,
The
and you
Crown.
said you couldn't for the Crown.
Hmm.
Okay. And then you said your Greek was really old-fashioned, according to you. Like, what did you mean by that? Can you tell me a word
So
in Greek that you think it's old-fashioned?
So I can't remember the exact examples, but in The Crown, I was supposed to be playing an Athenian, and Athenians speak Greek. You know, modern Greek is a very particular pronunciation. Even certain words we will use differently to Cyprus. And we had an Athenian dialect coach, and she works for the Greek embassy. She's a fantastic person, and I was really intimidated by her because
Okay.
I knew it's worse than even if because I've had to learn Italian and French for jobs, and that was easier because I was starting with a clean slate, whereas I knew too much. I understood, and I had got into a habit of pronouncing certain words in a particular way that we just don't say in you know, modern Greek. And so I had to unlearn them, and I found that quite difficult. But it's just practice, you know. You learn it like everything else, and I just had to really work at it. And in the end, she was very, very happy. And I remember when I said to my mother that I was going to have to do the whole part in Greek, and she went, "Oh my God, God help you."
Did she help you with that? Did she help you
she
unlearn
couldn't.
and
She
relearn? No.
No, she couldn't help me. But the dialect coach was fantastic, and she was there on set when I was doing my scenes. So it was she was fantastic. She would always kind of pick up on just a very, very subtle
Like,
pronunciation. And if I had trouble with a particular word, she'd just give me another word to use that I found easier. So she was fantastic. She really helped me a lot.
so she also helped you with the accent and all that slight
Because I
small things
wanted,
that are important for acting naturally, I guess.
yeah, and of course, you know what it's like when you have to speak in a different, you know, Americans find it when they have to speak in a British accent. Sometimes it gets in the way of the acting, but you know, it's just about being prepared. It's about being prepared and doing your homework. And I really, even though it was going to be translated and the majority of people, you know, who were going to watch it wouldn't matter whether I pronounced a word right or wrong. For me, it's really important. So, you know, I take what I do, even the smallest things I do, very seriously, and I want to do the best I can. I'm a bit of a perfectionist when it comes to my work. Sometimes I overthink things
That's
too
always
much. It
good.
gets in the way. But you know, it made me work hard at just making sure that it sounded authentic.
And you also speak French, you also speak Italian, so
When
you also have
when I say I speak it, I've had to speak it in. I've learnt it for, and like I said, I do this opera which originated in France, and it's one of those things where working in France for 3 months and you're surrounded by French crew. It becomes, I mean, I'm lucky because I speak a second language, or I understand a second language. I find it doesn't take me very long to pick up the language. And so after 3 months being in France, I was really proud of my French. Not so much with my Italian, but I've learnt Italian a lot for jobs I've done, particularly on stage. So yeah, I mean, I've got a good ear. I've got a good ear for dialect, and I think that helps me a lot. And it's a reason why I'm always employed to do foreign accents. So
So you think that being actually kind of bilingual and all that thing with the Cypriot dialect and the English language when you were a child, this really helped you becoming a multilingual when you grew up? Do you think
I think
it
so.
played an important role?
Yes, it does, because it does. It must do something. I mean, I don't know the science of it, but it must do something to your brain, because you exercise it in a particular way. It's the same thing as, for me, I find learning scripts. When you start having to learn a script, it's very difficult because you don't trust that you can learn it. But with the right technique, you find that you can achieve amazing things. I can learn scripts sometimes in a matter of minutes. I've been given something on set to learn, and literally before we were about to shoot something, and it's terrifying the first time that happens, but you learn a way of being able to assimilate this information very quickly. And I find the same way with languages, that a lot of the time our brains get in the way. They become an obstacle because they keep telling you, my brain anyway. I'm sure not everyone's like this, but for a lot of people, your brain is always telling you, you don't know it, you need more time. That always happens. So part of the process and the skill is to try and overcome the doubt, and to trust that when you do the homework and you put the preparation in, it goes in. And half the time it's our doubt which gets in the way of learning things. It's kind of, you have to be really receptive, and that's hard when you feel pressure.
These things for us are really interesting, since we are a multilingual magazine. Each of us speaks many different languages, and I think we all understand what you described by the process that language really trains the brain, and then you get the ear, you can learn more easily.
Yes.
Okay, I find it really interesting that your background helped you also with your acting.
Very much.
That's pretty interesting.
Can I ask something? I just wanted to ask, from all the languages that or maybe accents, what was the hardest for you? Because myself, also speaking a couple of languages, I have this thing where one overlaps another when I try to learn it. And do you have the same issue sometimes?
Yeah, I do. There was once when I did a theatre show called Travels Around My Aunt, or Travels with My Aunt. It's a Graham Greene novel set in the 50s, I think. It's an old-fashioned book about a man who goes on this world trip with his aunt and meets all these different characters. And my role, there was only 4 of us in the company, and my role was to play every single foreign character. Everything from a black person from Johannesburg with a thick South African accent and dialect, and to Turkish, to Italian, to French. And literally, there was 14 characters, and I had to the only way you could tell, because we were all dressed in suits, was in my accent. It was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. But you kind of find little anchors to connect. So a word. So I would always, just before I'd go on stage as the next character, there would always be a word that if I said it in the accent, it was like a key. It allowed me in to the accent, and I would just say the word, just before I went on stage, and the dialect would come, because I was speaking in English, but with thick accents. Wow, that was really tough. That was tough.
Yeah.
And the other one was trying to be a Russian, and I remember the dialect coach saying, "It's really good. No one would know except a Ukrainian, because you sound Ukrainian, not Russian." And it's well, that's the best I can do.
Yeah, it is. It must be very difficult, because you risk when you do that, especially when you have to have so many different accents, you run the risk of kind of come out as a stereotype in that accent.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, especially Russian.
This character was larger than life. It's a great play called You Can't Take It With You. It's an American play that was written in the 30s. It won a Pulitzer Prize when it was first done on Broadway, and we did it in Manchester. And the character is a guy who is nostalgic for the old days before the revolution. Let's put it that way. So he's a very particular kind of Russian, and he's a ballet teacher. He's a ballet master, and he's a bully. And so he's always being aggressive. And the one thing I learned is that being aggressive in a Russian or Ukrainian accent was very, very easy. And that kind of made a lot of sense to me. And it was a comedy as well. So, you know, I would have approached it in a completely different way if it was a serious drama. And the same thing with Travels with My Aunt. It was 4 actors playing all of these characters in a very stylized way. So there was an acceptance. The audience enjoyed the game that we were playing, and we were very explicit in the game because we didn't dress up, we didn't even put on hats. We literally just changed our physicality or came through a particular door, and that would be. But it was a game, so it was less about being I just had to make sure it was clear which character was which. At one point, I was having a conversation with myself, like this, talking like this, talking like this in a different accent.
Oh my God!
So it was but that was the game, and the audience enjoyed it. So it is, you know, I think if I was doing a naturalistic drama, I'd approach it completely differently, of course.
Yeah, because it's a comedy, so it's also should be really clear which character you're speaking right now, and should be recognizable. So, like, yeah.
So, Antonio, to answer your question, in a way, you can't help but play into the stereotype a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, I'm myself half Russian, so I definitely understand when people go too far with an accent, and it's really hard to play this line. Like, I have like plenty of examples where I can say this was really subtle and it was really good. You can still like be funny and stereotypical. But it's really hard to do.
I mean, Ken Branagh in Tenet. I don't know if you've seen it, but you know, but he's a larger than life character in that.
Yeah.
Tell us about your drama experience, Miltos. You studied drama at university, right? Was it because you knew you were going to be an actor?
No, it's because I couldn't do anything else academically. That's the honest truth.
Okay.
I wasn't. I didn't have. I didn't know anything about being an actor. I didn't have a great time at school. I always felt a little out of place, like I didn't quite fit in. I was quite introverted as a child, and everything I found very, very overwhelming, and so I really struggled. But when I discovered drama, because I had a very good English teacher who took care of me and realized that I couldn't, you know, academically I couldn't find a way into my education, but they found a way that by tapping into my creativity. And I didn't know anything about that, of course, but when I did a first performance, and it was a mime, it was just a movement piece, I really responded, and it really turned me on, you know, it switched something on in my brain, and that was my way into my education. And I would do plays all the time. Even when I became a teenager, I you know, I would never go out with my friends. I'd always go to rehearsals after school. You know, that was became my obsession. I would do Midsummer Night's Dream and you know, open air performances and musicals, because I was very lucky where I grew up in Eastbourne. There was a very good amateur dramatic society, but not for 1 second did I think that that was going to be my career. I was going to be running a fish and chip shop, as far as I was concerned. I didn't want to.
Okay.
I didn't want to, but you know, I didn't want to disappoint my parents. I still don't want to disappoint my parents. It's kind of one of the driving forces in my life. You know, I think it's like that for all of us. But I knew it was, you know, because I worked in that fish and chip shop from the age of 12, making coffees and fruit salads, and I hated it. Like, I really had a miserable time as a child. I was like, it's either school, which was something I hated, or having to work in the restaurant afterwards. It was just one of those things that I just kind of was really struggling to find the thing that I wanted to do. But drama was my escape, and for me it was a hobby. But I thought, well, if I'm not going to work in a chip shop, I better go to university, and I applied to do law at certain universities. But luckily, I had an intervention, and a friend of mine took me to one side and said to me, "Miltos, don't."
Yeah, especially law. That's really difficult.
You're going to have a terrible time. You'll probably not make it to the end of the course. And so, luckily, I trusted him and I listened to him. And he said, "Go and do a degree, but do something that you will really enjoy learning about. Do something to do with drama." And of course, it was the best thing he could have said to me. And that's what I did. I changed my mind at the last minute. And I went and studied a 3-year performing arts course in Eastern European theatre. So I went from musicals and Shakespeare to the most avant-garde experimental theatre I have ever seen in my life. And it literally blew my mind. And it opened my eyes to styles and techniques and practices that I have incorporated in my theatre ever since.
You starred in many theater performances and opera performances of Shakespeare's plays.
Yeah.
And yeah, you combined the physicality of your characters with the wisdom and language. Was there a role that you found most challenging? Having to combine tumbling and, I don't know, something that was most difficult?
Playing Feste for the Royal Shakespeare Company was tough. I really enjoyed it, and there was lots of great things in it, but Feste has to have the sweetest voice in the world, and I don't have the sweetest singing voice. That was hard for me. A lot of the other stuff I really enjoyed, and I kind of found an affinity with that character and his melancholy, and also his mania. I kind of played him like a manic depressive. He was either completely bouncing off the walls physically, or like close to tears most of the time. So that I connected kind of emotionally with, but the singing was tough. And at the time I smoked, so it was kind of my own fault. But it's really hard to ask someone to give up smoking. And you're not going to do it in 8 weeks. You know, create a beautiful voice. I can sing, but Feste, to work really well with some of those songs, has to be something very, in my opinion, something very specific. And that was tough, even though I really enjoyed the experience. I love all the Shakespeare that I do because it's a challenge, and because most of the time I play the fools, the clowns, and a lot of the time, like in Twelfth Night, Feste talks about he is a corrupter of words, and a lot of the fools do exactly that. They take what you say and then they corrupt them, twist it, and then feed it back to you.
Hold it against you, yes.
Yeah, and it's fantastic. I love it. But a lot of the time, some of the meaning can get lost because it doesn't even matter if you understand what I'm saying. The context doesn't exist anymore to make sense of it. So the reason why I love doing these roles, and the reason why I hope I get to play every single one in the canon before I die, is that it genuinely is a challenge to find ways of making these characters resonate and kind of connect with an audience, because you have to find the reason why they exist and the reason why they're funny. And sometimes people just cut the jokes because they don't make any sense, but I would rather not do that. I would much rather find a way of making them work in whatever context we're telling the story of the play, because of course whenever you do a Shakespeare you can reimagine it and reinvent it. So for me, I love being put in that position. I mean, it's perverse, because I love the challenge of it, even though I find it so hard. But I do get a lot out of it, and that's why I love Shakespeare so much, because it's like a puzzle that you always have to, and it's completely open to interpretation. It's all about how you approach it, but you can't be gratuitous with it. You can't impose something on it. You really do have to let the language do the work, in my opinion.
In connection to being very physical.
You can't separate physicality from the muscularity of Shakespeare. The two things are, because it's not like speaking in a natural way. So it has to marry. The physicality has to marry with the language.
Do you think your training in doing theater helped you get the part for Game of Thrones?
Yeah. Because they were looking for someone who had sword fighting experience. And in any other context, that would be illegal nowadays, right? You don't carry swords around and kind of know how to use them. But you get put in prison for things like that nowadays. So I did a lot of sword work, and I worked with some amazing fight choreographers when I was at the RSC, and that's kind of really where I got most of my experience. I also have a background as a dancer, so a lot of the work that I did when I left college was with dance companies and choreographers. I got employed in Carmen just to do the tango. I was just a dancer, but I had a little moment in the middle of the big tango number where I just let rip. And even, it's so terrible, I was a young guy and I got given this amazing moment, and in the reviews they noted it, and it was terrible because you're not supposed to upstage the singers, and the singer was really upset about it. I got really embarrassed because I got noted because of my dancing during her singing. I know, the shame of it. But so I have a natural aptitude to kind of to upstage people, so I have to use it very carefully. But yeah, it did come in useful.
Talking about the casting for Game of Thrones, you mentioned in one interview that you're really grateful to casting director, and she used to go to people's performances to see them in an act. Was it the case with you that she also saw you one of your performances?
Yeah, Nina Gold used to come and see. I think we may be the same age, but she used to come and see me do little shows above pubs in North London. Her skill as a casting director is that she wouldn't just look in Spotlight, the industry magazine with all the actors' photographs. She would go and not just the stuff that was on at the National and at the RSC, but she'd literally go and just do the legwork, and she'd be out every single night at a different play, and that's how she knows what's going on out there. And there's not a lot of casting directors like that, but it's the reason why she is the biggest casting director in the world now, because she knows where to find actors.
And overall, how was it the whole casting process to get here? Because I know that it's been like few auditions. It's not just like you go once and you get the role. So, and were there any other roles that you auditioned for in Game of Thrones as well?
Yeah, I read for Lord Varys.
Right.
And
Really
that was the first character I read for, and a lot of the time they do that. I'm in a similar process at the moment for something else where they give you something and you read it and they really like it, but they don't think you're right for the part, and they send you something else, and then you read that and they go, "That's really good, but you're not right for that part. Read this." It's like so frustrating. Yeah, that happened for the Lord of the Rings TV show, and it's painful. It's really painful because invariably it goes nowhere. You know, you just do it many times and they really like you, but it just kind of disappears and they go somewhere else. They always have that phrase, "We've taken it in a different direction," which is like so but with this, of course, it was like as soon as I read Syrio, they kept asking me to read it again and again. It's the same scene. I was like, how many times do you want me to do this? Because I'm going to do it the same way. But, you know, they show it to a different person every time you do it. And also you do get better at it, of course, because when you first learn it, you barely know what you're doing. And as you do it more and more time, I think I did it 5 times. And then on the 6th time, they tell you that the Americans are coming to London. So far, you're just doing it in a room with the casting director and you know, the cameraman, and that's it. And they just get sent to America. But as soon as you know that the head of HBO and David and Dan, the creators and writers of Game of Thrones, and George you know, I don't think George R. Martin came to London to see me, but there was a room full of people. And it's terrifying because, of course, you know that it's literally between you and one other person. Pretty much, it's about you. You can either get the job in that moment or lose it. And they asked me to do it with several different voices. They asked me to do it in a kind of natural, you know, my natural voice. Then in RP, received pronunciation. You know, my RSC voice, I like to say, and then in the way that I did it in the end, which was kind of. I always say that it begins as an impersonation of my dad, and then I just kind of play with it so it doesn't sound like I'm doing a Greek accent. So and luckily it worked. They liked it.
Well, what was the scene that you auditioned? It was the
very first lesson.
Did you ever get to do it with Maisie Williams?
No. No, I just did it with Robert. Robert is Nina Gold's assistant. And he's so good. You have to imagine he read with every single character and every single actor that went into that room. Wow. He read as Arya Stark, Jon Snow, Viserys, Dany. Like, he read everything. And he was so good. He was so good that I swear it's his performance that got us the job. Because when you're reading off someone, if they're giving you something very, very specific, then you and you're listening, you do the same thing. You start to play the scene with them instead of the scene that you've learnt in your head, and that's very, very important. And something different happens, and it's subtle, but cameras catch it, and something happens. And I swear that he is the person who really made it work. He's so good that they gave him a part in Game of Thrones in the first season. That's how good he is. And he's not an actor. Let's remember, he's just the assistant doing the auditions.
Talking about the accent that you developed for the role, like in a lot of interviews, you mentioned that it's kind of mixture of different languages or like accent of different languages. So like there's Italian and even a bit of Persian. So did you come up with that on the spot? And were you like specifically thinking about like adding a bit of this, or it just was like playing around and just kind of coming up with that?
Yeah, I was watching Lost at the time, and Naveed Andrews was playing a Persian, Middle Eastern character.
Yeah, Said. Yeah,
I think Said.
Yes.
And he gave me a clue. So it started as my dad, an impersonation of my dad, and then I was trying to do an impersonation of Naveed, and that mixture, because also I was thinking about what Bravos was like, you know, whether it's an opulent, wealthy, relaxed place compared to the other parts of Westeros. So I was thinking of Persia at its height, or Venice at its height, you know, that kind of, so and because I was watching Lost, it kind of made sense to me to kind of push it as far east as I could. And I mean, a little bit, looking back on it, I think I roll my R's too much, but you know, there's no accounting for taste. And the thing is, it had to be something that you weren't going to recognize. It had to be something made up. And I remember asking David and Dan before I shot a single scene. I said, "How do you want me to play it? How? I mean, is it too flamboyant? Should I tone it down? What about my accent? Does it even work?" And they were like, "Just do it the way you did it for us, because that's why we cast you. Trust yourself. It's going to be fine." And that's the reason why it turns out the way it is. And then the other thing is that I said to them, "How do I pronounce the word bravo? How do I pronounce these words?" He went, "You're the first person that's going to say them. So however you say them, everyone else is going to have to say them like you." And I was like, okay, that's easy enough.
Yeah, like, because from the way Syrio described in the book and the way you played the character was rather different, because I would say you much more charismatic and playful than
Syrio's a bit more stern in the books.
Yes.
Yeah.
So but now thinking about Syrio, it's hard to imagine him like in any other way, like because he's so memorable for that reason, that he was had a spark in his eye. And and talking about the background of Syrio, that he's from Bravos, which is kind of supposed to be equivalent of Venice, but then I think you're right saying that because the continent Essos seemed to be a bit more like African, Middle Eastern, and that's why it was really interesting that you brought like a bit of Persian flavor to it. But the language that they supposed to speak there is High Valyrian, which is based on Latin. So I was really curious about whether you had the chance to hear High Valyrian or talked with the linguist David Peterson, who worked on the language. Did it influence your accent or no?
Did David also do Dothraki as well?
Yes.
So this is the reason why I never even met him, because he was too busy in Malta working with Jason and Emilia. So yeah, I'm sure if he was around, we would have had a discussion about it. But we shot the first lesson, pretty much one of the first things we shot in the whole show with Maisie. And so, and because obviously I wasn't speaking in a foreign language, because I was talking with Arya Stark. It was just, they liked the accent that I created, and they thought it was robust enough to sound like I could have been speaking what David ended up creating for the High Valyrian. So yeah, I didn't have a chance. I've met him subsequently in at conventions, and he's a fantastic and a very, brilliant brain. But yeah, a lot of it was just spontaneous. They really let me do whatever I wanted to, which is really dangerous for most actors. But they trusted me, and I don't know. I definitely don't know why. But yeah, and I kind of just followed my instincts. They just said, "Trust yourself. Just do it." You know, he's a very unique character. We'll rarely see any other character like him in the show. So you don't have to follow some convention. Just be yourself, because the most important thing they wanted to achieve is the love between the master and the pupil. they called it love because they said it has to resonate in such a short amount of time that it has a profound effect on her, and you have to start her story. And the first lesson is really important. In fact, all the lessons are really important, so much so that they wrote an extra lesson that isn't in the books, just because they wanted to see more of that relationship, because it matters later on when she loses him.
Yeah, I really agree that, like, for Arya, the whole story arc of Syrio is so important. And I really like how in one interview you even compare him to Mr. Miyagi on Obi-Wan Kenobi.
I mean, it's a bit arrogant of me. I even mentioned Obi-Wan Kenobi, but you know, I mean, that's how. I mean, I think it's a narrative. It's a narrative thing that you see a lot in fantasy.
Yeah,
trope.
He's like
there you go, a trope.
Yeah, he's like this teacher that we all want to have, like enigmatic and stern, but like really memorable as well. And yeah, like you also were saying about how Arya built a connection with Syrio, like he's like a father to her as well. And so I wanted to ask you, did you read the books by the time you were shooting, and did you know what's going to happen with Arya afterwards? Did you know how important he's going to be for her? Did you like?
I knew that I'd read the first book by the time we filmed. I didn't read any others. I knew that she was going to become a blind assassin. I knew that when we were filming. So I knew that the training is important because of who she becomes. And obviously David and Dan were very keen to make sure that they kicked off the story in the right way for her, and to give it the time that it needed. So we spent a lot of time on those scenes and really made sure we got them right. And of course, it wasn't just a case of just doing the scenes, but we had choreography that we had to really make work. And the reason why they asked me whether I had experience as a sword fighter is because we didn't have time to rehearse, and they needed someone who could look like he was doing it and not just use stunt doubles. Even though we did have stunt doubles, we never used them. We were very proud and committed to making sure that we did everything ourselves, and it shows in what Maisie does later on in the show. You know, she's great at that. But we were lucky because we can learn choreography. You know, that's the good thing about. It's the same thing with learning languages. I'm sure the same part of your brain gets exercised. So you can show me some moves and I can replicate them. My body's a little bit older now. I don't know how well I can replicate things, but I definitely used to be very good at picking up dance moves. You know. But yeah. So it was about making sure we created the right launching pad for her story. And
yeah,
it was very... That's it, I finished.
I just wanted to specifically talk about choreography on the show, about water dance, because I know that you worked together with William Hobbs to create the choreographer of water dance. And you also did it also with Maisie. So like it's almost like collaborative process how you created it. Well, yeah, could you tell us more about it? It's really interesting.
Yeah, so when I got the job, the first thing I said to my agent is, please get them to get me someone to train with, because I was really keen to make it work. The books don't describe the fighting. They talk about it being like water, that it's not hacking and slashing like the Westeros way. They describe certain, that it's one-handed with a wooden sword that is as heavy as a steel sword, that you do it on the side, almost like fencing, but wielding a broadsword. So we knew those clues, but everything else had to be made up. And I didn't know who they were going to get me. I was like, just someone who knows what they're doing. I had no idea that they were going to get William Hobbs, who is a legend, who was a legend. Unfortunately, he died like a couple of years ago. But, you know, he was the guy when it came to period sword fighting in films from the 70s onwards. It was always him. Rob Roy, Dangerous Liaisons, The Duelists, you name it, on stage and on film, he was the go-to guy, particularly in the period style of fencing, because there was Bob Anderson, who did Star Wars and The Princess Bride, but he was much more flamboyant. He was all about style, whereas Bill was all about the authenticity of the style, of historically accurate depictions of duels. And it was amazing to work with him. I turned up wanting to bounce off the walls, and he was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. We're not going to do any sword fighting. All I want you to do is tell me who this character is, because that's where we're going to start. We're going to start with who he is, and we're going to put whatever he does on top of it. And then I was like, he's not going to do much fighting, is he? And he went, no, he's not going to do a lot of fighting, because that's the thing about people who are very good at fighting. They don't have to. And I was like, oh God, I hate you so much. Why don't you give me a 5-minute scene? No, it's that and that. And he was absolutely right, you know, because that is more important than the moves. The moves are secondary to who the character is. And he is absolutely right. You know, everything is effortless. It has to be effortless. And if he's going to dispatch 7 knights, he's going to do it without breaking a sweat. And he's absolutely right with all of that. Yeah, he was amazing. It was an honor to work with him.
And like kind of finishing on about Syrio, we don't know what happens with him after season 1, and of course most of the people kind of in the 2 camps, whether he dies or whether he survives, and we see him later just with another face as Jack. I constantly struggle with pronouncing his name, like Jack and
Hagar.
Yeah. So what you personally like to think what happened to Syrio?
I have a theory, and I've cultivated it over many, many years of answering this question. And for me, Syrio is his role, and this is the reason why I say he's like Obi-Wan Kenobi. When Darth Vader cuts down Obi-Wan Kenobi, he doesn't kill him, or, you know, it's not a gratuitous massacre. He disappears in the same way that Luke Skywalker does when he uses his force powers at the end of The Last Jedi. I hope everyone has seen that film, so it's not a spoiler. They evaporate, and so there is something that allows him, because of the way they talk about the Force, that he kind of just becomes the Force and can still communicate with Luke. If Arya had seen Syrio cut down, it would have changed you know, I mean, I'm making all of this up. Of course, I'm making all of this up. So please bear with me. The trauma would have created a schism in her head that would not be as interesting as her just always remembering the lesson, which is the most important thing for her. So in the books, she repeats the mantra. She repeats the sayings that he has said to her over and over, and it goes throughout many of the books. She always comes back to the sayings, and I think there's something that is like Ben Kenobi speaking to Luke Skywalker in the Force. It's the same thing. The communication still exists because the echo of his character still exists, because she remembers him fighting, not dying. And I think as a narrative device in the books, it works very well. So much so that everyone who is a fan of the books cannot believe that he's just died. And I said to George R.R. Martin, because he wrote the episode 8 of the first season, I said to him, you can answer the question that everyone's been asking you since they read the first book in this moment. And he says, I don't want to. That's not the point of it. The point is it has to be ambiguous. It has to leave an echo. And if I just killed you off, that isn't what's going to happen. And I think he's right. And I think that is the reason why he writes it the way he does, and the reason why we shot it the way we did.
I think it's really, really like spot on and really interesting, because I myself as a viewer, I think when you watch first season, you connect with a lot of young Starks and Arya as well. And once all of the changes happen in their life, you're looking back on the first season or the first book as something in a way like good old times. And Syrio being part of it, but not dying, is like making him more as a person. He kind of becomes this idea, like, yeah, like, and I think, like, yeah, and he supports, and this thought that he possibly might be alive or it's not important, like, I think really supporting Arya on her way. And it's like really interesting how Syrio specifically prepared her for all the difficulties that were coming for her more than anyone else, like more than her own father. And yeah, like echo of Syrio like stays in her story for like until the very end, even like in season 8, I think, like still. So yeah, like we all love the Syrio as much as Arya. So yeah.
Yeah, that's...
Yeah. So and then we wanted to mention, that's why for anyone who's watching and also meets Syrio as much as we do, that you can record greetings for fans on Cameo.
Yeah.
So like if you want to give someone a gift, that's a great idea. Here you go. We will leave the links in the bio and in comments, so you can like check it out later. But yeah.
Do you do it like in different languages, since you speak?
I can. I've never really been asked to do it in different languages, but I will absolutely do it in different languages. In fact, you've just given me an idea.
Maybe Cleo can challenge you to say something. Yeah, in Greek.
What would you like to say? What do you think would be the best?
Well, how do you say "not today" in Greek?
Not today. Ίσως αύριο. You can say. Ίσως αύριο. It's like maybe tomorrow.
Ίσως αύριο, yeah. Ίσως αύριο.
Όχι σήμερα.
Όχι σήμερα, ναι. Ίσως αύριο is a little bit more poetic, I think. It's a great idea, Antonio. I'm going to ask people to challenge me, and I'll have to, there'll be some terrible Google Translate versions, but I will definitely give it a go.
That is a whole other project, like, actually do it as Google translates it. Yeah.
Tell us about teaching fencing and the water dance workshops that you do.
Yeah.
Is it because you want to please your father and show him that you're a teacher?
That's because I'm a fraud. That's why. I got into the teaching because I did my very first convention in Belfast, and Maisie and Sophie, who played Sansa, were there, and we were all so young and fresh-faced, and it was a small little gathering of not many people, maybe 200 people. George R.R. Martin was there. There was a whole bunch of medieval warriors who kind of do fight recreation. They're like the hardcore. They actually attack each other with axes and stuff. And they wanted to fight me, and I was like, I not going to fight you because you will actually kill me. I'm an actor. You put on armor and literally try and kill each other. And they really do. And but I think George was in the audience and he said, you've got to do it. And of course, everyone really wanted us to do it. So I kind of had my arm twisted, and we did a little kind of sparring, and it went down so well that people started asking for me to do it. So initially I was a little reluctant because I was like, I'm not a teacher of sword. I'm just someone who can make it look like I can, you know. But what I realized was that when I started doing conventions, I realized that the most boring part of conventions is sitting behind a desk and signing autographs. And I realized that I could offer something a little bit more interesting and do something where I could interact with the fans, and that was a bit more interesting. And so I did some homework, and I put together a 45-minute class, really simple, which was kind of basically me talking about my experiences working with fight choreographers and the kind of things that we do to try and make fights look authentic but also safe. And I thought I would teach people who'd never done it before how to do it in a really reckless way, because of course if it could be very dangerous, it could be very dangerous. My dog's going for a walk, and I think it's the best opportunity for me to introduce this beautiful. Look at this beautiful.
Oh,
This is Louis.
Oh.
He's going for a walk, and when he comes back, good boy. All right.
Adorable.
And he's going for a walk now. It's his time. And so I just, you know, and obviously as I did them more and more, I kind of started to feed in more interesting ideas that I would start to want to explore, which is, you know, what makes something we see on stage or on screen, particularly on screen, because we can use examples. What makes a fight on screen authentic? Why do we believe it? What makes a good choreographed scene? And what is the similarities that we see in fight choreography that we see on screen, and historically what a duel would be like. And I think when we did, when I first met you, Elisa, and we did the film festival, the Romanian Film Festival, we talked about Rob Roy, and which William Hobbs directed, the scene between Liam Neeson and Tim Roth. And it's a fantastic example of something that is really authentic, feels real, but has all the drama and tension of two people fighting in two different styles, but being historically accurate at the same time. And for me, that is what I'm interested in exploring. And I'm also interested in getting people to do something they've never done before, and working together in a way that is safe, but also has an element of improvisation. And it's amazing what you can do in about an hour and a half. And one day I want to do like a residency of 5 days where I have 20 people for 5 days, and we literally spend those 5 days creating a battle, and we just put it together. And people who've never done it before, not stunt people, people who have never fought before. In 5 days, I think we can do it.
And actually, when you were here in Athens and you gave that water fence workshops in the Athens Comic Con, some friends of mine wanted to participate, but in the end they didn't manage it. But they told me that the most interesting thing, according to them, was this, that you also mentioned that it's something completely new that you can't imagine you can learn and even try to do. That's the thing that made it more interesting and exciting, and they wanted to take part to see how is this possible to do that you see only actors that they can do.
Yeah, It's fast, and you know, it's a little haphazard, but I've kind of got a technique now that really allows people to understand what they're doing. And with a little bit more time, I'd say 3 hours would be like perfect with 2 breaks. So an hour a break, an hour a break, and an hour. I think in 3 hours you could really cover a lot of ground and give people enough tools and enough vocabulary to be able to use the 4 moves. I just give them 4 moves, and you can use them in any variety, any sequence you want. And it's all about changing the dynamic, how you watch each other, and the cues you give each other, so that you're never taking people by surprise, even though it looks like you are. And to me, it's like a martial art. It's like, to me, a lot of it comes from Aikido, where it's about how you move through space. And I always say that the space in between each move, like the length of time that there is between this move and another move, is as important as the moves themselves, because that's where the tension lies. You know, when you see 2 swordsmen, you know, facing off against each other, it can be as fast as The Princess Bride. It can be, of course, but most of the time, duels are much more considered. That you don't try and attack your opponent unless you believe that that blow is going to kill them. You don't waste a single move, because every time you try and attack someone and it doesn't connect, the likelihood of you dying because of that suddenly goes up about 100%. So it's really important to always, I try to instill that in people, because a lot of the time it's just an imaginative exercise. We can turn into children when we get given a sword in our hands, and we just whack each other, and we just whack swords against each other. But to really imagine what it would be like to be on the cusp of life or death with a sword in your hand, that's half the way to making a good fight. You've got to believe it. You've got to believe the stakes. You've got to believe that anything you do could be a mistake and could end up killing you. And that's kind of what I kind of try to explore. And it makes it much more open. It makes it much more inclusive. I've taught blind people. I've taught people in wheelchairs. There is no, there really is no obstacle to learning this stuff, because it's not just about how you move, but your intention. And so, yeah, my classes are always open to everyone.
No, that's very interesting. Like, I was thinking that if one actually thinks how it would be to fight, you know, to the death, so in real life, it is true. Yeah, you wouldn't go as fast as, you know, in The Princess Bride, and like, because obviously that is show, you know, that is it show you how exciting, you know, this can be. But if someone thinks that actually about to kill each other, you know, their goal is to kill each other, that's not how it would happen. It would happen like very, very slow and very measured. They would be perhaps in the extreme, like in real life, it would be very boring to watch, because as you said, like
or messier, or much more messier than it can look on film. Much messier and much more ruthless. A lot more running away.
Yes. So you want to find like a middle ground, like, you know, between being nice to watch, and yeah, being more realistic than just going super fast. And yeah, no, it's
Rob Roy. Watch the last duel in Rob Roy. That's a very good example of all of that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you could record yourself saying in Greek, "I like fencing."
I could do that. Yes.
You remember how we say? It's kind of sounds poetic. Like, μου αρέσει να ξυφομαχώ.
Να μου αρέσει.
Μου αρέσει να ξυφομαχώ.
Να μοχα. Say it again.
Μου αρέσει.
Yeah. Να μου αρέσει.
Να ξυφομαχώ. That sounds perfect.
Xifamoho.
Exactly.
Namu aresi xinama. Oh my God, you've got to write that down.
Yeah,
that's beautiful.
Challenge, actually.
Write that down for me in the chat, and I'll learn that.
Sure.
That's really good. Namu aresi namax. I'll add the last bit. Really good. That's beautiful.
You know, when I ask my friends, not Greek friends, what do you hear when I speak in Greek? They always tell me, we always hear like,
yes.
So I think that's the perfect phrase for that.
In Cypriot, we turn in Cypriot. Yeah, exiomaho.
That makes sense to you, at least. Yeah, because
Mo aresi na xifamaho. Yeah, xifomaho. Xifomaho. Yeah, beautiful. Thank you for that.
And it sounds perfect how you say it. I think that's the best you can record.
Really nice. Thank you, Cleo.
It looks really nice as well.
And would you ever consider acting in Greek? Either in plays, in television, maybe in Cyprus? I don't know.
Yeah, very much. After doing it in The Crown, I thought to myself, yeah, I can learn Greek and yeah, I can definitely do that. I could definitely do it for that. So it's yeah, I definitely would be up for it. I'd love to work in Greece much more. I'd love to work in Cyprus too. I'd love to work as a director, to be honest. That's what I'd really like to do. I'd like to take my skills and do something really that they don't do very much in Cyprus. Because a lot of the television, I know it's changing a bit, but a lot of the television, a lot of the soap operas, a lot of the dramas are always pretty much the same. I'm kind of interested in bringing something a little bit different. So yeah, I would.
Actually, I would love seeing you directing something in Greek or Cypriotic television. And actually, we collaborate with each other, so you can do a really big production here. And you could also act yourself, or also
why not?
You can also consider the theater, like Greek tragedy or Greek comedy.
I always wanted to do something like a new adaptation of the Greek myths, but set it in modern day, and all the characters are kind of relatable to the world we live in right now. You know,
like
how we see
of today.
Yeah, like how we see celebrities as gods sometimes, and how fallible they are.
There is a book about that of a Greek writer. You may know him, Augustos Korto. It's his name.
Okay.
And the book is called New Greek Mythology. So not ancient Greek, but New Greek Mythology. And it's exactly what you describe.
Gods are on Earth, for a period of time. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he tries to present its character like Aphrodite, for example. She's the top model that has every man she likes and everybody adores her. And there comes Hephaestus that always follows her, but he's kind of left out. And he really presents gods like actual people. It's a whole book. You should read that. I don't know if it's translated.
And we've got to adapt it and turn it into a TV show.
Yeah.
That's perfect. That's the perfect idea.
Okay, I'm going to speak. I'm going to read it and speak to him.
He's on Facebook, and you can contact him for sure.
Amazing, amazing. That's really fantastic. See, that's exactly. I've been thinking about something like that, and I think that would be great to kind of do an adaptation of that book. It sounds like it's very much in keeping with, something I've been cooking. Yeah, please, thank you. Yeah.
What else have you been working on, Miltos?
I have
any projects apart from acting. Anything else you've been doing?
So there's a project that I've been doing right now. That's for Apple TV. Very big production, really great cast. I'm so sorry I can't tell you anything about it. It's so boring, but it's going to be good. It's going to be really good. And it's all set in London. modern day. I'm going to be, last year, unfortunately, because of the pandemic, it all got pushed back. But do you know the film, The Hitman's Bodyguards? The Hitman's Bodyguard, with Samuel L. Jackson and Ryan Reynolds. It was a big, black comedy. It's always black comedy when it's Ryan Reynolds. They made a sequel. And I get to play an Italian mob boss who tries to kill Samuel L. Jackson. And that's coming out next year. Or maybe this year. We'll see. It's been ready to go for a while, but I think they're waiting for the cinemas to open again. So that's good.
What an Italian accent.
Yeah. Italian American, that kind of style.
All right,
yeah, but Italian, yeah, definitely. And that was great fun. I got called a motherfucker by Samuel Jackson, so I feel like I feel like I've ticked that box. I can retire happy now. But it was great working with him. Our scene is together. It's not a spoiler to let you know that me trying to kill him doesn't go quite to plan. So. And then there's a couple of things that I'm in the mix for, new TV shows. But I try not to think about those things because it's too much emotional investment, and eventually they only say no anyway. So, but busy. There's a play that I was rehearsing when we closed down in England that we will restage, hopefully at the end of this year. Which is a really wonderful play at the Royal Court. So there's always stuff, it's quiet. There's no doubt about it. Our industry has really suffered because of the pandemic, but we are finding ways to make films again. And that's working. So that's really good. Filming is all back and running. It's because the companies have so much money. We get tested every 2 days. So sometimes I feel like I'm safer at work than I even am at home. So it just goes to show you what privilege can get you. There are people who having to go to work every single day and put themselves in harm's way, and risking their lives, and they can't even get a test. And people like us, because we have the facilities and the money to make believe, we're getting tested twice a day. So that makes me sad, but at the same time, we are being very well looked after, and so we can work. That's the most important thing, and we feel safe.
Yeah. Yes, thank you. We have like a few questions from people. There is Jack Bellamy has a couple of questions. One of them is like, what was your favorite scene to shoot in Game of Thrones? Another one is, which one is your favorite character in Game of Thrones apart from Syrio?
So my favorite scene to shoot was the one with the Lannisters, because those Hungarian stuntmen, they made me look good. They really did make me look good. They were fantastic. They were fantastic, and it was really exciting doing that scene. I mean, it's very rare for an actor to get to play a character who's much cooler than themselves. Most of the time we play clowns and fools and people with many flaws. So the wonderful thing about Syrio is that he's a very noble, very skilled person, and you never see another side of him. So he's kind of iconic in that way. But yeah, learning the fights and doing the fights were really exciting. And as far as characters, I tell you who I love the most, and there's so many great characters, but I really like Bronn, because I like the ruthlessness and the, he was a piece of work, and he got all the best lines. Between him and the Hound, I think the two of them had the best characters, just because they were like, they were survivors. And it goes to show you that the Hound didn't survive to the end, but that was from his own choice, I think. But Bronn certainly did, and it made a lot of sense because people like that survive in Westeros, not Ned Stark.
Yeah.
Characters you love to hate.
Yeah.
So are those like characters that you would have liked to play, or yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm only little, so I don't. I'm not quite. But yeah. And I really liked Jaime Lannister. I really liked that character. I liked him because he was someone that I really didn't like at first, and his journey, his development was a really wonderful thing to see. And Nikolai, of course, was so fantastic in that role and brought so much to it. Yeah, I really liked his character. I mean, you know, when I say like, I just found his story compelling, you know, and his transformation as well compelling. Surprising.
And how it was to go from like the fantasy world to science fiction, maybe world.
I mean, Star Wars.
It's not that different. It's not that different. It's really lovely to walk onto a set in Pinewood and see hundreds of people, you know, like droids and animatronics and people dressed as aliens and little people inside big costumes and big costumes inside little. I mean, it was, you know, if you remember, the prequels were all done on green screen and with very little practical effects at all. And JJ completely went back to basics, and everything was there. And that's the same thing as Game of Thrones, because when you walk on set and you walk into the throne room and it's huge and it's impressive and and it's lit, it's like you don't have to act. It's like you're there. And the same thing happened with Star Wars, and that's why I say they're very similar, because there's the same sense of awe, you know, when you're on set. The level of detail. In the scene where I have my lessons with Arya Stark, there's a balcony and it looks out over King's Landing. And of course, in the show, it's Malta. But that was a painted backdrop. It was a painted backdrop, and it was lit in such a way so that when you looked at it, even on set, it looked real. And that was really impressive. I was like blown away by that. I was like, this is, because, you know, you imagine you're walking in and it's Northern Ireland and it's wet and it's dark and it's really windy. And then you walk in there and it's like, it's the summer. It's like a beautiful summer's evening. And it's like, yeah. No,
anytime you show King's Landing, it's always like just pleasant weather there.
Wonderful.
But you also worked on really a lot of historical drama, like Tulip Fever, like Crown, Wolf, Danish Girl. So they also, in a way, like transport you to another period of time, which is like not real. So it's like most of your appearances on the screen like been like that. So we're like,
it's what we do. It's what we do in the UK. We do period drama. It's like, because for some reason, I mean, it's not like I'd love to do much more science fiction. That's my bag. I love science fiction. I want to do science fiction so badly. I want to be stuck somewhere in the middle of space. That's what I want to do. But a lot of the stuff we do is period, and it's not a choice. It's just I'm lucky enough. It's also because I have a reputation as being the guy that they employ when they need to do a foreign accent. Also, I'm cheaper as well than most people, so that's also comes in handy. I remember doing Wolf Hall, and the main scene that I did was cut from it, and it was such a great experience because I was playing the King of France, and it's a scene with Mark Rylance's character, and he just sits there and listens to me go on, and it's a very explicit scene where I basically intimidate him by calling him Welsh and then being really explicit and gratuitous about knowing the girls, Anne and her sister, intimately. And, you know, it's just to undermine him and to make him feel very weak and vulnerable. And it was such a great scene, and it got completely cut. But, you know, a lot of the time, the process is really the thing that I love the most. I barely see anything that I do, to be honest, unless I have to do ADR and have to do extra recording. And so you go into a studio and you have to watch it. But most of the time, luckily I'm too busy doing other things to kind of sit down and watch stuff. So I let other people to watch it and tell me whether it is good or not. But most of the time, I always have to watch it like this anyway, because I always see the flaws, you know. But I love the process, and it was great working with such a legendary actor, especially in a scene where he barely says anything. I'm doing all the speech. But the terrible thing is that I obviously was a French king, and I did it in a French accent. But all my subjects were actually French actors, and I was really embarrassed because I was like, "This is ridiculous. What must they be thinking? This British actor talking with this accent, which." It was pretty good, but maybe it wasn't good at all. Maybe that's why they cut it. Maybe the French went, no, what are you doing? Who knows? But I still say it's because it was quite a very explicit scene. And I think it may have been, it's only one scene. And anyway, that's, you know, there's a lot of stuff that I've done that has never seen the light of day. You know, it's literally just lying in some kind of in a graveyard, the actor's graveyard, where everyone's scenes that have been cut out of movies have been kind of put in one place. So, but it's all right. I still got paid, so you know that's okay too.
Yeah. Have you watched the rest of Game of Thrones? Like,
yes, I became a huge fan.
Okay, good.
What did you think about Arya's journey, especially in last season?
It's good. I was very proud of her. But what I liked the most was when kind of halfway through, when she really lost her way, when she was on her killing spree, and particularly when she leaves the Hound to die after his fight with Brienne, and she leaves him and goes to Braavos. I really like that because not only does Maisie play that so well, so perfectly, you know, you can see something has died inside her. And normally revenge stories play out very, very obviously. You know, something terrible happens to her and we want her to get her revenge. But the wonderful thing about Game of Thrones, and the wonderful thing that David and Dan created in her story, was that they made it difficult for you to enjoy it. And I think it's very important. It's very important to remember that something dies. Something dies in you when you start pursuing revenge, and it's really good. And I think she played it so well, and I think that is what makes her story so interesting to watch. And everyone has that kind of journey in Game of Thrones. It's never straightforward. It's never formulaic. That's when Game of Thrones is at its best, is when it's surprising you.
Yeah. Are you gonna watch the upcoming Game of Thrones project that they're I think starting doing now? It's like the story before.
Yeah, I guess I will. But I'm very fussy. But you know, I've been proved wrong about my instincts. Like, for example, I don't know if you've been watching WandaVision, but when they said they were going to make that show, I had no interest in it whatsoever. I thought, what's the point? You know, they told the story in the movies. This just feels like the quest for more money. You know, like that's my attitude to most sequels, right? So I had no interest in it whatsoever. But my God, I have to eat my hat because it's one of the most original shows. Surprising, witty. It just goes to show you. So as much as I will tell you that I don't really care about the prequel, not because I have some, you know, vendetta against, you know, because we did it first. It's just like we told that story. I'm always interested in what the new story is going to be. But the talent and the creative team that are making it, I'm sure they will surprise us, and I'm sure they will do it justice. So watch this space. I will keep an open mind, but I'm more interested in finding the next exciting new thing. But to be completely fair, you know, WandaVision has completely blown me away. I'm so excited by it.
Yeah, WandaVision, is a really great project, and I think it's sometimes not about like story, but how the story is told. And with WandaVision, this is the thing: story from, if you would just read it on the paper, might not sound really exciting, but even once you see the trailer, once you see the first episode, you immediately caught, because you're like, wow, this is like really interesting. So yeah, hopefully.
And I just feel like it was very bold. Like they took a real risk because they really played out the story really slowly, and they're still playing it out slowly, and it makes you kind of really, you know, it's the way that the best stories are told. It's like the best ways are when they surprise you. You know, that's the really only reason to tell stories, is to move us, and if we're surprised, we're moved. So, and the acting is fantastic. They're really great. They do such a great job.
Yeah. And this was a great pleasure, a great interview. We learned so many things, and we're looking forward to your new projects when we will actually be able to know, which one.
I'm looking forward to see you directing in Greek.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's something I really want to do. I'm definitely pursuing that. Definitely.
And it's been really a pleasure to listen to all this interesting stuff, also about your childhood, your dialect. For me, it's pretty interesting to hear.
Yeah, we will add in the description like your Instagram, your social media accounts, that of your dog, and Cameo websites, and so maybe I can ask you to say things in Italian. And,
yeah, we invite people to challenge you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for being with us. Thank you.
It was
Thank
a
you.
pleasure. It was a pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye.
Yasu.
Okay. Thank you. That was great. Thank you very much to everyone.
Wait, Miltos is there?
We're still live, and we are gonna put like links in the description. Remember that you can download for free issue 0 of Longitudinous, or you can book the paper copy. And thank you again for watching. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Ciao.